Okay, I have about 6 different themes that I wanted to talk about today. It all begins with being distracted. Have you ever been distracted?
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. I got stung by a bee on the way to church here today. And then I had to stop for gas and discovered that while I live in Deserano, when I was buying gas on a gas bar here in Kingston, my wallets are at home. And I found that out after I went to the counter. So I had to borrow money from the choir this morning to go back after church to repay it. Thank you, Bonnie. She's saving my bacon. Major distractions or minor distractions. It depends on what's happening in your life. And I've had one of those weeks when I couldn't get my head straight in any way, shape, or form. It all began a week ago. I left here last Sunday and had to go visit with a family. Now, you all remember last Sunday. It was a Sunday, nice sunny day, and on your way to church, you probably saw a lot of people running, walking, or riding in the Terry Fox marathons. And some of us remember Terry. 31 years ago actually, he passed away from cancer. But not before he had inspired our nation and most of the world with his grit, determination, his sense of purpose, and his willingness to not be distracted by his goal. What made that such a juxtaposition for me was I was on the way to meet the family of a young man, 26, who had taken his own life shortly after he'd celebrated his first wedding anniversary. It was a bad week. I spent a week with a family that was in deep grief, and no one can understand what happened and why. Not only did he take his life, he had a small contracting firm, and his 3 employees, who were all family members, all lost their jobs that day. So it was a family devastated both personally, spiritually, and economically. And it had a big impact on me. I'm at the funeral home working with the family and doing the things and going in and out of their home. And all of a sudden, the words of the scripture from this gospel started to play in my mind. The gospel lesson here is the Pharisees coming to Jesus and saying, by whose authority are you doing all this? By whose authority are you saying all this? And it started to work at me. By whose authority? Who gives me the right to tell this family anything? What is it I have to bring? What is it you got? What are you going to say to these people? And you start to question yourself. And you start to question by what authority we do anything. You start to look at all the distractions in your life. You look at the things that are going on. Have you ever been in that position of questioning, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? What gives me the right? What gives them the right? It happens to us all the time. If you remember what was just read by Beth, when Jesus was asked by what authority he was doing these things, he said to the Pharisees, let me ask you a question. And if you can answer it, then I'll tell you, I'll give you the answer to what you're asking. And he simply looked at them and says, you know John the Baptist? You know, he's out there baptizing people? You kind of got some things to say about that too? So you tell me, is he doing it because he's inspired by God? Or is he just doing it because people want him to? And they all go off in a little huddle and chat about it. Should be pretty simple. They don't like what John's doing. They just need to say he's doing it because of the people. Now we're talking the Pharisees. We're talking the religious leaders of the community of the day. They should be doing everything they're doing with the moral sense that they're doing it because of God. So the easy answer for them just come back and say, he's doing it because the people want him to do it. Well, that's not what they do. They go over there and they say, look, if we say it's from God, then we have to stop complaining about it. And we have to stop objecting to him doing it. Fine. But if we say it's from the people, then we're going to have to say that what the people think matter, and we should be listening to the people, so they won't make a decision. Because they know that as much as they have this moral authority for what they do is from God, they're really doing what they do just to please the people. And so they come back to Jesus and they say, we don't know. That's the societal answer for, I don't want to say. Have you ever been there? Ever used that, I don't know? You know, the other one is, what do you think of my new dress? Interesting. That's safer than I don't know in that circumstance. But they both are the non-committal answers for, don't pin me down here, I don't want to say because it's going to cost me one way or the other. So the Pharisees come back with the politically correct, ambiguous statement, and Jesus says, oh, there you go. Tough. I don't have to answer your question, you didn't answer mine. And what he's basically saying is, it doesn't matter. You do what you do because you have to do it. I can tell you where I'm coming from, but you don't really want to know. Because if you knew where I'm coming from, you wouldn't like it. So don't ask what you're not prepared to hear. When I was asking myself the question, by what authority do I have to go into a family and talk to them about these matters of life and death? And I realized I had only one way to go in that door, which was strip away the title, strip away the office, strip away everything and just go in with one thing I had that was of relevance, which was my faith. Not the greatest faith in the world. Not the strongest faith in the world. Not the most spectacular faith in the world. Just simply my faith. My faith that no matter what I've been through in this life, somehow God has not forgotten that I exist. Even when I have chosen to run away from God. And that no matter what this family was facing, they needed to know that they were not going to be alone. There's so many distractions. So many questions, so many searchings going on in that process. And when I walked away from that, and I finished up with the service, and I came home and got busy with the rest of my life activities, dealing with my sons, and dealing with my family, and dealing with whether or not my house should be cleaned, I realized that those questions don't go away. It's always by what authority, by what reason, by what power are you doing this? And I realized that everything in my life exists for one reason and one reason only. To somehow stay connected with God. Do you ever find yourself forgetting to stay connected with God? Forgetting to get up in the morning and have that conversation with God that says, I'm doing all this, God, help me deal with it. It's pretty easy to forget about God, you know. Most of us wake up to alarm clocks. Anybody got a really nice alarm clock that they just totally love the sound of? No, huh? When my youngest is with me on the weekends that I have him and on the days that I have him, I actually have to hide my alarm clock. Because it frightens him. And it's frightened him so badly over the years that now just seeing it scares him. But that's the way our days begin. They're jarred awake, and then we start to think about all the things we have to do. Anybody just wake up and go, oh, what a lovely day, I have nothing to do, I have all the time in the world, I'm going to go sit by the lake forever and do nothing.
You say that when you're retired.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yeah. There's the pot calling the kettle black. Our days begin with distractions. It can be even, for some, I wake up alone. That's the distraction of being alone. Now what do I do with myself? Do I go down there for coffee? Do I make it for myself? Do I go talk with the people, or do I stay at home? Do I go next door and talk to the neighbors? No, I'd rather not. They're fighting again. You know the distractions that exist in the world? And then it's bills to be paid, jobs to be finished, tasks to be accomplished, work to be done. Whatever it is, there's something that's always grabbing your attention. Always grabbing your attention. I'd like you to dial the clock back now 2,000 years. You remember the day? You're standing by the lake. There's a crowd of people. And there really is a big buzz going on. And there's this guy there, and everybody wants to talk to him. Everybody wants to see him. Everybody wants to hear him. Everybody wants to touch him. Everybody wants just a piece of the guy. And he's busy with everybody. He's got time for them all. And all of a sudden, you look around to see where he is, and he's not around. And off in the distance, out in the lake, is a little boat. And somebody says, oh, he's out there. He's gone over there. And we hear in Scripture all the time of how he pulled apart. He went off on his own. He went with one or two of his trusted associates, or he went by himself. And he had time for whom? Who did he have time for? He had time for himself. Now that's selfish. That's really selfish. Why would anybody want to have time for themselves? Some people think they have too much time for themselves. Or we think other people think they have too much time for themselves. But time for self means time with whom? With God. Time to reconnect. Time to be a part of all you can be. Time to get past the distractions and the questions and the trickery of the Pharisees who want to take Jesus and say to him, answer our question, because they really didn't care about his question. And they didn't care about his answer. They just wanted to trip him up. They were just a distraction to his work, to his being, and to his living. I saw the phrase years and years and years ago, and I just love it. You know, it was a question. It was, are you a human being trying to be spiritual? Or are you a spiritual being trying to be human? And I'm focusing on the question in this little seminar I was in. Oh, that's kind of cool. Am I a spiritual being trying to be human? Or am I? And then the trick was, there was neither. The guy wanted us to focus on the fact that there was no word doing in it. We're not spiritual doings. And we're not human doings. We're beings. We are a state of nature. We are part of what God created. We are a being within God's being. And what we do is a product of how we understand ourselves as a being. By what authority are you doing these things? By what authority are you living this life? By what authority do you have the right to come to church and express a faith? By what authority do you get to take that faith and use it in your daily life? It is the authority of being within God. You know, we do the prayer of confession, and we're always constantly reminded after the prayer of confession in that assurance of pardon that we are forgiven and loved of God. And you can go to any church on any part of this planet. They're going to have some form of confession in which we confess to all the things we've done wrong so that we can understand all the things about what it means to be right within God. And we're always balancing between why are you doing it to who are you. And it comes back to, by what right do I get to talk to a young family about a tragedy? Or to my son about why his football team choices are wrong? Or anything in this world. And it comes back to being the authentic, loved child of God. There are people who want to tell me, who would have said to me, if I'd asked them that question this week, by what authority do I do this? They say, well, you're an ordained minister of the United Church of Canada. They've given you the authority. And I look at them and go, yeah, and that's worth what? Doesn't make me more qualified than any one of you. And I know for a fact, looking around today, I can say that because there's no other ordained ministers in the Church of Canada in here right now. And that just simply means those of us that do this role went to university, passed a few courses, got past the pop quizzes, and got through a committee structure that said, yeah, we'll ordain you. That's all it means. Seriously, and I'm not downplaying what I do, but it doesn't make us more qualified to be anything than any other person. The authority by which we do anything in this world is the God-given authority of being one of God's children. That's all that matters. Doesn't make anybody perfect. It just means that in our imperfection, we understand what it means to be fully loved. My little guy this weekend taught me something. Something huge. My son, and you're going to think this is strange, my son, like his father, I have, for those who don't know me, I have two sons. One's 36 and one's 4. That's a life story, but we'll come back to that another time. My 4-year-old, it lives between his mother's home and my home. And this was my weekend with him, and it was my grandson's 9th birthday. And so we were to go to the birthday party. And Ian, my youngest, says to me, Daddy, I'm going over, okay. And my oldest son lives next door. And Ian's running over to the house and sees these kids there. Next thing you know, he's sitting on the couch, busy with something. I go, Ian, aren't we going to the party? No, Daddy. I said, don't you want to go see Alex? Yeah. Who are the other kids that are there, Daddy? And I went, well, they're his friends from school, and some of the ones you'd know from school. No, Daddy, I don't know them from school. And my son is painfully shy. Painfully shy. And he gets it genetically from me. And the truth is, that's true. I have been culturally adapted as a minister's kid and as a minister to have a public persona that says I'm less than shy. But put me in a new situation, I'm the guy in the back of the room. I'm the guy sitting behind. I don't sleep much on Saturday nights because I simply have to stand up here and do this. My son is like me. But my son had come to me from his mother's home having a touch of the flu and had been sick for a couple of days. So I said to him, Ian, do you want to go to the party? No, Daddy, I was puking at Mommy's house and I'm not feeling very well. What do you say, right? He may be right. It may be a reoccurrence. So we'll sit back. So 2.5 hours later, the other kids are going home, and Ian wants to go over to the house now. And I said, Ian, did you really not feel well? Or was it just a case of you didn't want to see the other kids? And the look that went across his face was, oh my God, I've been caught in a lie. Now what do I do? And I looked at him and I said, it doesn't matter what you answer me, I love you. And if you really didn't want to go, you just have to tell me you didn't want to go. I wouldn't have made you. And you're not in trouble for saying what you said. And he taught me what it must feel like to be God. And I don't mean to don't put too much on that. But it was like the look was like, oh. And he just gave me a hug. He just hugged me. And it was, wow, what a lesson in life. Because he expected to be criticized. He expected to be punished. He expected the worst. And all he got was, it's okay, I love you no matter what the answer was. And when I stand up here as a minister and I say things about We question ourselves in the distractions of life. We question the things that have pulled us off track. We question the things that have made us go down paths of choices that we wish we hadn't taken. All the things in life that lead us in directions we wished we might not have gone in now. And we sit there and we try to, and we all have the public persona thing, right? We all have that. Well, I'm retooling my life, or I'm doing this, or I've made a career change, or I've done this. And basically people have fallen apart, and they just don't know how to say it. They're afraid of what the rest of the world will think of them. The bottom line is, in the end, you were loved. In the end, you were cared for. In the end, the one who loves us forever loves us still. The young man who took his life didn't know that, by the way. He thought because he'd suffered some injuries a few years ago that limited his capacity physically, that he was less than a person and couldn't live up to the expectations of others. And so he chose, in that dark hole, to move to another life. Terry Fox chose to move to another life, one that ignored the dark hole and pushed himself forward to another place beyond distractions. If I had to make a comparison between the two beyond that, I would look beyond them to the families. And the Fox family that was incredibly loving and supportive of the individual. And this young man's family, who could do nothing but criticize one another and were at each other's throats. And you wonder where the sense of love went. How do we get beyond the distractions of life? How do we get beyond the rattle of the alarm clock? How do we get beyond all those things that would drag us down and move us in another direction? As I said to the kids, take that time in the morning with your porridge to talk to God. That's really all it takes. When the Pharisees said to Jesus, "By whose authority do you do this?"